Prepare yourself for a true test of my noise deck in a competitive setting. I'm playing the Steam Hack League, and I'm up against an Astrobiotics deck. So, let's see how I can fare. But first, my opening hand. This is a pretty darn good opening hand. Can't ask for too much more. Inject will allow me to draw the wild side and ESOPs that I need. And I start off with the Cyber Feeder cash combo. So, anytime during my first 2 turns, I'm definitely looking to install Cyber Feeder into cache. That will give me a net of 3 credits, but more importantly will set up the Cyber Feeder for the rest of the game. So that is very important. Against Astrobiotics, I cannot run recklessly, unfortunately, because a lot of Astrobiotics decks pack Architect these days, and running Architect at the wrong time can easily be my downfall if I allow the corp to chain into a free Astroscript. Alright, I start with the inject and I basically get a heavenly hand. That's what they call it in Chinese. It's the best thing you can draw. A wild side along with both of my test runs. That is incredible. And I think this sends a very strong message to my opponent as well. He has to be very scared. He has to be afraid of everything and anything that noise can bring to the table. So yeah, both test runs so early on in turn 1. This is huge. This allows me to tutor for anything I need. As I said, I'll be looking to use them to tutor Mimic and cash for money, imps to trash all his asset economy, so on so on. There's a lot of things I can do with it. Unfortunately, I don't really have too many credits right now. First, I attempt to run HQ. I fully acknowledge the risk of Architect. If he reses Architect, he'll be down to 1 credit. He cannot score an Astroscript off that. I run and I fetch a Beal. Fantastic. With 2 more clicks left since I installed Wildside, I install the Data Sucker for free because of Cyber Feeder. This is solely to mill cards. Data Sucker isn't of too much use in my deck. He then installs 2 cards. So I definitely need to challenge the remote. It could be something like an Astroscript, and I'm making sure he's not going to get a free 1 off. He does allow me to go through, and I run and see the Sand. Unfortunately, I do not have the early imp, as I normally do in my other matchups. I've been pretty consistent about drawing imps early on in the game for most other matchups. This game, no imp. It's not going to be easy. He's getting a free marked accounts off, and he has a Sand on the table. Thankfully, he's not on 8 credits yet, so I'm not too worried just yet. Next, I run Archives and force him to res the Architect. This is why you never run last click again anymore. It's too scary, the threat of being able to score an Astroscript immediately. I know he's down to 1 credit, but this cannot happen too often. So he basically gets 2 installs, and I check his archives, only an Eli there, but I'm seeing more and more influence. And I take the opportunity, since he's not on, he has very few credits, I take the opportunity to run R&D, and I see an NAPD contract, definitely stealing it. Most people say you don't steal the NAPDs. I say you go for it, because every point counts. You force the corp into very stupid decisions, especially if they don't have an Astroscript scored yet. So I think this is basically the best start that you can ask for. 4 points in the first 2 turns against Astrobiotics, and they are down to 5 credits. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, it all goes downhill from here. I first checked the card that he installed from Archives. He installed 1 card from Archives with the Architect. I make sure that it's not an agenda, because he could be trying to dodge the agenda, prevent me from stealing it through my Archives run. And that wasn't the case, so that was time wasted for me there. And then I proceeded to install ESOPs, which I thankfully drew with my Wildside. This is why Wildside is so important. It allows me to draw my combo pieces to build up. And with the ESOPs, I can start pawning off my 1 install cost viruses, so that I can actually get a footing this game. Because yes, I'm pretty poor as it is. So I trash the cache, and I find another cache in Wildside. Once again, heavenly draw. This is huge. So now suddenly I have 6 credits, and I have a whole host of tools available to me. Corroder, Medium, Parasite, and 2 test runs. Looking pretty good. The question is, which tool should I go for? Mimic seems like the obvious choice here, and I really do want to install Mimic. Unfortunately, that will cost me, I don't really like test running for Mimic because it will cost me 6 credits. 3 to install the Mimic, 3 for the test run, and just to get through archives, probably not worth it. I'm not going to check archives every day. And yeah, that he might be running another architect, but the chances of him drawing it is much lower now that I've already seen the first one. So he has a Sansan there. I saw that earlier, and I knew he had 8 credits. He has 4 credits, and he's going to gain another 4 next turn, so I'm forced to trash it. Otherwise, he would score an Astroscript. That was necessary. So I look back at my hand, and seeing that he has 4 economy cards out, this is very scary. I know that I definitely need the imp soon. So, or I could go the other way. I could just focus on central pressure and ignore his money generators, because 4 economy cards this early on is really tough to fight. And that is what I should have done in retrospect. I should have capitalized on the fact that I had an early medium in my archives, and I could have fetched it with Deja Vu and start applying pressure on R&D. Assemble a nice breaker suite, Corroder, Mimic, Data Sucker, and go all in on R&D. Unfortunately, that's not what I do. Instead, I test run for the Imp and attempt to contest him. First, I contest the Jackson. This is whether I'm playing Central Assault or Remote Assault, the Jackson has to go. So I definitely force him to use the Jackson there, and then I trash 1 pack campaign. Slowly but surely, I'll erode his money off. This should be pretty important, because if I'm able to keep his economy low, I will prevent him from using Biotic Label safely. And that's a third of his fast advance con, which is pretty huge. Then the other third, that is Sensitivity Grid, can be taken care of by running with Imp. And the last third, Astroscript, well, at least he hasn't scored any yet, so that's my only defense against that. Alright, whilst I draw into Imp and my second copy of Medium. This really is time to install Medium. Unfortunately, I'm once again got down to very few credits. My caches have all run dry, unfortunately. One problem was that I didn't see a single copy of Daily Cast, so I wasn't able to get any money rolling. So I installed the Imp that I test ran. It appeared back on the top of my deck, and then I trash and mark the counts. I could trashing a pack campaign is obviously the better choice, but I can't do that. If that's an architect on the pack campaign, I'm in huge trouble. So he proceeds to set up his remote server. You can safely assume that's an Astroscript there. I've been prepared for this. I pawn off the Data Sucker, so I will have 3 credits to play my test run, and guess what I'm going to test run? I know I have a Stim Hack in hand, so obviously I test run for my Cryptsys. On my second click, I load up Cryptsys so that I have enough virus counters to get through his entire server. No, I don't. I only have enough credits to virus counters to break through 2 pieces of ice. First is the wraparound. Unfortunately, I didn't install my Corroder, so I'll have to pay the full 8 credits for that. But credits are not the problem. The problem here is that he can res all 3 ice. He then shows me the Quandary. He boots me out prematurely. I choose to continue with the run because at this point there's nothing that I can lose. Sure, the most inner piece of ice could be an architect, but either way, I know it's an Astroscript behind the server, so I need to get all the way in. So yeah, I trash Cryptsys to break through Quandary, and he shows me the Eli, which has to run. Now, if I had a Corroder here, things might have been different. Things would have been different for that matter, because wraparound wouldn't have cost 8 credits to break. I would have gotten through that server, the game would have been different. So I think a very, very valuable lesson to learn here is install your Corroder as soon as you can. I mean, especially given the start I had. I had 2 test runs, I had a Data Sucker sort of loaded on the board, and I had a Corroder in hand. So I should have tried to go for a standard Anarch rig instead. I would be safe from program destruction because with Mimic out, you are pretty safe from Rotor Turret. There might be Grim, but well, you have Deja Vu and Test Run to save you from that. Instead, I went for Cryptsys and it didn't pay off. Ambient Ice is pretty good at stopping Cryptsys. Between Wraparound, Toll Booth, yeah, I wasn't getting in that turn, and that really cost me a lot of tempo. My 3 credits became 0 because of the test run, and I took 1 brain damage. Pretty bad news. Here I was forced to trash my Imp. That is not a good play against Ambient, but I have no choice because I needed the money to get my daily cast rolling. So that is very unfortunate, and because of this, I gave him the breathing room to score his first Astroscript, and he has a Sand behind that 3-stack server. So now contesting the server has really cost me a lot. The tides are turning, they are turning very fast, he can win in a matter of turns. So I inject, and I see quite a lot of programs, stuff that I'd rather not trash. But at this point, I'm just digging for my deja vu and possibly my last cache. Yeah, I know there's opinion on inject is very, very divided. And yeah, this game, it is true that inject has been working against me somewhat. But you must admit that the first inject was heavenly. How can you ask for more? Test run, website. That just shows you how powerful inject is. Well, it comes at a cost, and sometimes you have to bear the cost. Right now, I decided to pawn off the wild side as he scores his second Astroscript. With 2 Astroscript tokens out, you can be sure that he will win the game the next turn, with a rare Sand to boot, unless I contest the Sand. So that's exactly what I do. The Corroder finally comes out. I break through his 2 barriers with impunity and trash the Sand with Imp. So Imp comes in handy here, and always install Corroder. I'm not sure what I was thinking. Very stupid not to install Corroder. If you think of the standard ambient near hub ice suite, you definitely will see at least 3 wraparounds and 3 Eli's. Install that Corroder. And finally, my first copy of Grimoire appeared way too late. I definitely needed it earlier. That would have empowered my caches. That would have done a lot more to threaten him with imp tokens and the like. But well, can't complain now. I brought this upon myself. So he finds his final Astroscript, so he's on 6 points and he has 2 Astro tokens. Game's over. With 4 points, I'm not even at match point yet, so I can pretty much concede at this point. But I'll still play out the game just for fun. So yeah, I run R&D because right now there's no holding back. It's now or never. So I just go all in, and of course I hit the Architect. Once again, not test running the Mimic early on was a huge mistake. I knew that was a line of play, but I willfully ignored it because it was so expensive. Big mistake against Near Hub. If you are pretty sure they are running Astrobiotics, you have to get a Mimic out. It defends against Roto Turret, it defends against, which, by the way, Roto Turret is an easy counter against Scheherazade. Mimic deals with Architect very easily, dispatches it for 2 credits, which are payable by Cyber Feeder. And Mimic's just so good. Unfortunately, it's still somewhere in my 8-card deck. I still haven't drawn it. I wish I had, but well, it's my fault because I started with 2 test runs, and neither of them were put to good use. My first test run for the Imp was probably a mistake. I don't know. That is debatable. I think I would rather have used the cache. I could have used caches better. And test running for the Crypsis, obviously, contesting his remote was probably a mistake. I should have just applied central pressure because, even if he had 3 Astroscripts available, which he had this game, he could easily chain them. He could easily chain them, Astroscript after Astroscript, and especially behind the Sand, a rare Sand which I cannot attack. But think of it this way. To chain 3 Astroscripts, he needs 3 whole turns. 3 whole turns without defending his central servers, without getting extra money. Those 3 turns, I can wreak a lot of havoc with medium and my breakers. That's not what I did, and I paid the price. So I think this is a lesson learned the hard way. Most of my other noise games I can get by without assembling a proper rig at all. Usually I just have a Crypsis lying by the side and a necessary breaker, either a Corroder or Mimic, depending on the matchup, and just mill the Corp to death. Lots of cache recursion, lots of imps, deny all the economy. It's easy to win that way. Against Near Hub, well, it's a different breed altogether. You need to get those central accesses. It all boils down back to central accesses, and I didn't manage that game. I didn't make one single successful R&D run without the after effects of Architect. HQ runs were terrible. If you saw just now, as I was talking, I did manage to trash a fast track, which otherwise would have won him the game, but that just delayed my inevitable loss as he installs and uses 2 Astro tokens to score an NAPD from hand. if the opponent can score an NAPD from hand to win the game, you know you're pretty screwed, and that was exactly the situation I was in. Very regrettable, because this game I definitely should have won. I mean, you could say that he got lucky by finding 3 Astroscripts. They could have been in his archives instead, and I could have milled them, and he wouldn't have been able to score them. I could have stolen them, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's my own fault. Starting with 2 test runs, and a wild side ESOPs, and a cache so early. Yeah, you cannot ask for anything more than that starting. I got 4 agenda points. I was more than halfway to winning the game after 2 turns, but I just blew at my entire lead by doing useless stuff like installing imps, attempting to contest his economy when clearly it was not going to be of any use. I should have just played faster than him. It's very weird to say that against a nerf hub deck, but yes, I should have raised him in terms of getting breakers out. As I said, the tools that I have at my disposal are so effective at dealing with ambient ice. Think about it. Parasite deals with quandaries and pop-up windows easily. Mimic disposes of rotor turret and architects. Wraparounds as well. Toll booths, you have to pay 3 credits, but then David gets you through 3 times. The only real worry is Lotus Field. That is quite a problem, but other than that, my deck is pretty solid, and I didn't take full advantage of the ice breaking power that it offers, and I lost as a consequence. So thanks for watching, and I certainly have learned a lot from this Astrobiotics game. It's definitely one of my weakest matchups, and I'm looking to continue practicing with my noise deck to make it competitive. See you around.